The afternoon sun was hot and bright as Colonel Minjun Park drove his silver Honda down the empty highway. He had left the military base 3 hours ago and still had 2 more hours to drive. His mother was waiting for him in Georgia. She had called him last week saying she missed him. Minjun had not seen her in 8 months because of his work. Minjun wore his Army combat uniform. The tan and brown pattern covered his shirt and pants. On his chest were many ribbons and medals. On his shoulders were the silver eagles that showed he was a colonel. He had served in the Army for 22 years. He had been to war zones. He had led thousands of soldiers. He had received awards for his bravery and leadership. But right now he was just a son going to visit his mother. The highway took him through a small town in rural Alabama. Minjun had never been here before. The town looked old and quiet. There were a few stores, a gas station, and a church. Not many people were on the streets. Minjun kept driving at the speed limit. He wanted to reach his mother's house before dinner. Suddenly he saw red and blue lights flashing in his rearview mirror. A police car was right behind him. The siren made a short, loud sound. Minjun felt confused. He had not been speeding. He had followed all the traffic rules. But he knew what to do. He put on his turn signal and slowly pulled his car to the side of the road. Minjun turned off his engine. He placed both hands on the steering wheel where the officer could see them. This was what he always did during traffic stops. He had learned to be very careful during these situations. As a Korean-American man, he knew some police officers treated him differently because of how he looked. The police car stopped behind him. Minjun watched in his mirror as a tall officer stepped out. The officer wore dark sunglasses and had a thick mustache. His face looked angry even from far away. The officer walked slowly toward Minjun's car. His hand rested on his gun belt. The officer reached Minjun's window. Minjun had already rolled it down. He kept his hands on the wheel and gave a polite smile. "Good afternoon, officer," Minjun said in a calm, respectful voice. The officer did not smile back. He leaned down and looked into the car. His eyes moved slowly from Minjun's face to his uniform. The officer's expression changed. His mouth twisted into something that was not quite a smile. "License and registration," the officer said. His voice was cold and hard. "Yes, sir," Minjun replied. "My license is in my wallet in my back pocket. My registration is in the glove box. I am going to reach for them now." The officer said nothing. He just stared at Minjun with those dark sunglasses. Minjun moved very slowly and carefully. He took out his wallet and removed his driver's license. Then he opened the glove box and found his registration papers. He handed both to the officer. The officer took them but did not look at them right away. Instead, he kept staring at Minjun. "Where are you coming from?" the officer asked. "Fort Benning, sir. I am driving to visit my mother in Georgia." "Fort Benning," the officer repeated. He said it like he did not believe Minjun. "That's a military base." "Yes, sir. I am stationed there." The officer looked at Minjun's uniform again. His eyes were cold and suspicious. "You didn't use your turn signal back there," the officer said. Minjun felt confused again. He always used his turn signal. Always. It was a habit from his military training, but he did not want to argue. "I apologize if I forgot, officer. That was not my intention." "People like you always have excuses," the officer said. Minjun's stomach tightened. He knew what "people like you" meant. He had heard phrases like that before in his life. But he kept his face calm. He kept his voice respectful. "I meant no disrespect, sir. I am just passing through your town." The officer finally looked down at Minjun's license. He read the name out loud, but he said it wrong. He made it sound harsh and foreign. "That's an unusual name," the officer said. "Where are you really from?" "I was born in California, sir. But my parents came from South Korea." "South Korea," the officer said slowly. He made it sound like an accusation. "Long way from home, aren't you?" "America is my home, sir. I have served this country for 22 years. The officer laughed. It was not a friendly laugh. It was mocking and mean. "Sure you have," he said. He tapped on Minjun's uniform. "This looks real fancy. Where did you get this costume?" Minjun's jaw tightened, but he controlled himself. He took a slow breath. "This is not a costume, sir. This is my official United States Army uniform. I am a colonel." The officer laughed again, louder this time. "A colonel," he repeated. "You expect me to believe that?" "It is the truth, sir. People like you buy these uniforms online. You wear them to get attention. To get special treatment. The officer's voice was getting louder and angrier. Well, it won't work here. Not in my town. Minjun felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his hand steady on the wheel. He kept his voice calm. Sir, I can assure you this uniform is authentic. I have my military identification card if you would like to see it. Oh, I'm sure you have a fake ID too, the officer said. He straightened up and looked back at his patrol car. You just sit tight. I'm going to run your information. This might take a while. The officer walked back to his car with Minjun's license and registration. Minjun watched him in the mirror. The officer got into his patrol car but did not seem to be doing anything. He was just sitting there, making Minjun wait. Minjun looked at the clock on his dashboard. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. This was taking much longer than a normal traffic stop. The officer was doing this on purpose. Minjun noticed another officer in the patrol car. A woman with dark hair pulled back in a bun. She seemed to be talking to the first officer. Even from far away, Minjun could see she looked uncomfortable. She kept shaking her head and pointing at papers. More time passed. Minjun saw a few cars drive by slowly. The people inside stared at him as they passed. Some of them looked curious. Others looked away quickly. After 25 minutes, the officer finally got out of his patrol car again. He walked back toward Minjun, but this time his face looked even angrier. The female officer got out too. She followed a few steps behind, watching carefully. The first officer reached Minjun's window. He held out the license and registration, but when Minjun reached for them, the officer pulled them back. Step out of the vehicle, the officer ordered. May I ask why, sir? I said step out of the vehicle now. Minjun knew he had to comply. He unbuckled his seatbelt slowly.
He opened his door carefully.
He stepped out onto the hot pavement and stood straight, his military training showing in his perfect posture. The officer looked at Minjun's uniform again. He pointed at the ribbons and medals on Minjun's chest. What are all these supposed to be? The officer asked with a sneer. These are awards for my service, sir. I have served 2 tours overseas. Overseas, the officer mocked. Let me guess. You went back to visit your family? No, sir. I served in combat zones in Afghanistan. The female officer stepped closer. She looked at the insignia on Minjun's uniform. Her eyes widened slightly. She touched her partner's arm. Derek, she said quietly. Those look real. Maybe we should— I'll handle this, Martinez, the officer named Derek snapped at her. He turned back to Minjun. Take off the jacket. Excuse me? Minjun asked. You heard me. Take off the jacket. I want to see if you have any identification underneath. Real identification. Minjun felt humiliation burn in his chest, but he had been trained to stay calm under pressure. He had faced enemy fire. He had made life and death decisions. He could handle this racist officer. Sir, I would like to speak with your supervisor, Minjun said firmly but politely. Derek's face turned red. He stepped closer to Minjun, invading his personal space. I don't care what you want. You think you can come into my town wearing that uniform and demand things? People like you need to learn respect. Officer Martinez looked very uncomfortable now. She pulled out her phone and seemed to be recording something, but she held it low so Derek could not see. Minjun stood his ground. He looked directly at Derek's sunglasses. Officer, I am asking you politely, what is your badge number, and who is your commanding officer? Derek's face turned even redder when Minjun asked for his badge number. His hands formed into fists at his sides. For a moment he just stared at Minjun with pure anger in his eyes. You want my badge number? Derek said slowly. You want to complain about me? For what, doing my job? I simply want to ensure this interaction is documented properly, sir. Minjun replied calmly. Derek stepped even closer. He was now only inches from Minjun's face. Minjun could smell coffee on his breath. Let me tell you something, Derek said in a low, threatening voice. You don't get to make demands here. You don't get to question me. I am the law in this town. Me. Not you in your little costume. Officer Martinez moved closer too, but she looked worried, not angry. She touched Derek's shoulder gently. Derek, maybe we should just let him go. He hasn't done anything wrong. The license is valid. Everything checks out. Derek shook off her hand roughly. Stay out of this, Martinez. This doesn't concern you, but Derek won't die. I said stay out of it, Derek shouted at her. His voice was so loud that a few people across the street stopped and looked over. Martinez stepped back, but she did not go back to the patrol car. She stayed close, still holding her phone. Derek turned his attention back to Min-jun. He walked around him slowly, like a predator circling prey. He looked at Min-jun's uniform from every angle. "You know what I think?" Derek said. "I think you bought this online. I think you're one of those people who pretends to be a soldier to get free meals at restaurants. To get people to thank you for your service," he laughed meanly. "It's called stolen valor. And it's a crime." Min-jun felt his patience being tested, but he remained calm. He had dealt with difficult people before. He had negotiated with hostile forces in war zones. He could handle one ignorant police officer. "Sir, I understand your concern about stolen valor. That is indeed a serious issue. But I can prove my service is real. I have my military ID card, my orders, and my contact information for Fort Benning. You can verify everything." "Oh, I'm sure you have fake papers too," Derek said. "People like you are always prepared with fake documents." There it was again. People like you. Derek was not even trying to hide his racism anymore. A small crowd was starting to gather on the sidewalk. 3 people stood watching. One of them, an older woman with gray hair, held up her phone. She was recording the entire scene. Derek noticed the crowd and seemed to get angrier about it. "This is police business," he shouted at them. "Move along." But the people did not move. They just kept watching and recording. Derek grabbed Min-jun's arm roughly. "I'm taking you in for questioning, for stolen valor and impersonating a military officer." Min-jun did not resist, but he did not move either. He stood firm and looked Derek directly in the eyes. "Officer, you are making a serious mistake. I am a colonel in the United States Army. If you arrest me falsely, there will be consequences. Not for me, but for you." Derek laughed again. "Are you threatening me? A police officer? That's another crime right there." "I am not threatening you, sir. I am informing you of the facts. The United States Army takes care of its own. If you wrongfully detain a colonel, the military will respond." "The military," Derek mocked. "You think the military cares about you? Look at you. You think someone like you could really be a colonel? Colonels are Americans, real Americans." Min-jun felt something break inside him, but it was not his composure. It was his last bit of hope that this situation could be resolved peacefully. He realized Derek was not just ignorant. He was hateful. And nothing Min-jun said would change his mind. "I am an American," Min-jun said quietly but firmly. "I was born in California. I have bled for this country. I have lost friends defending this country. I have earned every single ribbon on this uniform. And I have earned the right to be treated with basic dignity and respect." Officer Martinez wiped her eyes. She looked like she might cry. She stepped forward again. "Derek, please. This is wrong. You know this is wrong." Derek spun around and pointed his finger in her face. "You want to be written up? You want to lose your job? Because that's what will happen if you don't shut up and get back in the car." Martinez looked at Min-jun. She looked at Derek. Then she looked at the people recording. She made a decision. "No," she said firmly. "I won't be quiet. This is racial profiling. This is harassment. And I won't be part of it." Derek's mouth fell open. He looked shocked that Martinez was standing up to him. "You're done, Martinez. Your career's over." "Maybe," Martinez said. "But at least I'll be able to sleep at night." More people were gathering now. 6 or 7 people stood on the sidewalk. 2 cars had pulled over and parked. Everyone was watching. Everyone was recording. One man in the crowd, an older man wearing a baseball cap, called out, "Hey, I know that uniform. That's the real deal. Leave him alone." Derek glared at the man. "Mind your own business, old man. This is my business." The man shouted back, "I served in Vietnam. I know a real soldier when I see one." "And you're harassing him for no reason." Another voice came from the crowd. "A young woman this time. This is disgusting. Someone call the police chief." Derek laughed at that. "I am the police in this town. Been on this force for 15 years. The chief won't do anything to me." Min-jun stayed quiet during all of this. He just stood there with perfect military posture, his hands at his sides, his face calm. But inside, his mind was working. He was calculating his options. He was planning his next move. Derek turned back to him. "Take off the jacket now, last warning." "No," Min-jun said simply. "What did you say?" "I said no. This uniform represents something bigger than both of us. It represents sacrifice and service. I will not remove it because you demand it. If you want to arrest me, arrest me. But I will not cooperate with your harassment." Derek's hand moved to his handcuffs. He started to pull them off his belt. Fine, you're under arrest for what? Martinez interrupted. She stepped between Derek and Minjun. For what crime exactly? Failing to signal? We both know he used his signal. Stolen valor. You have no evidence of that. All his documents are valid. What are you really arresting him for, Derek? Derek's face was purple now. Veins stood out on his forehead. His hand shook as he pointed at Martinez. You just ended your career. I hope you know that. Better than helping you ruin his life, Martinez shot back. The crowd was getting bigger. Someone had called the local news station. A reporter was already on the way. Another person had posted the video on social media. It was starting to spread. Derek seemed to realize he was losing control of the situation. He looked at the crowd. He looked at all the phones recording him. He looked at Martinez standing against him. And he looked at Minjun standing calm and dignified in his uniform. Fine, Derek said. You want to play this game? Let's play. He pulled out his radio and called for backup. This is Officer Walsh requesting backup at Highway 82 and Pine Street. I have a suspect who is refusing to comply in a hostile crowd. The radio crackled. A voice came through. Copy that. What's the nature of the incident? Derek paused. He seemed to be thinking about what to say. Possible stolen valor. Suspect is impersonating a military officer. There was a longer pause on the radio. Then the voice came back, sounding confused. Did you say impersonating a military officer? Did you verify his credentials? I'm handling it, Derek snapped. Just send backup, 10-4. Backup en route. Minjun knew this was about to get more complicated. More officers would arrive soon. He needed to act now. He needed to call someone who could help him. Someone with authority. Officer Walsh, Minjun said, using Derek's name for the first time. I would like to make a phone call. You're not under arrest yet. You don't get a phone call. Actually, as a citizen being detained, I have the right to contact someone. And as a military officer, I have the right to contact my commanding officer. Derek smiled nastily. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. They won't help you. Minjun slowly reached for his phone in his pocket. He moved carefully so Derek would not accuse him of reaching for a weapon. He pulled out his phone and unlocked it. The crowd watched in silence. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Minjun scrolled through his contacts. He found the number he needed. He pressed the call button and held the phone to his ear. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone answered. General Morrison's office. How may I help you? Minjun's voice was calm and professional. This is Colonel Minjun Park. Service number 556782341. I need to speak with General Morrison immediately. It's urgent. Derek's smile faded a little, but he still looked confident. He did not believe Minjun was really calling a general. One moment, Colonel Park, the voice on the phone said. There was a brief pause. Then a deep, authoritative voice came on the line. Minjun, is that you? What's wrong? Sir, I apologize for calling you directly. I am currently being detained by local police in Alabama. The officer is accusing me of stolen valor and refusing to verify my credentials through proper channels. There was a moment of silence. Then General Morrison's voice came back and it was ice cold. Give me your exact location. Highway 82 and Pine Street in Oakdale, Alabama, sir. Who is the officer? Minjun looked at Derek's name tag. Officer Derek Walsh, sir. Put him on the phone. Minjun held out his phone to Derek. General Morrison would like to speak with you. Derek's confidence cracked just a little, but he still tried to act tough. He snatched it. Minjun took his phone back and put it to his ear. General Morrison was still on the line. Minjun, are you all right? Yes, sir. I'm unharmed. Good, I've already made some calls. Help is on the way. Should be there in about 20 minutes. Can you wait that long? Yes, sir. I'll be fine. I'm very sorry this happened to you. This officer will answer for his actions. Thank you, sir. Minjun ended the call and put his phone back in his pocket. He looked at Derek, who now looked worried and confused. The confidence was gone from his face. What did he say to you? Minjun asked quietly. Derek did not answer. He just stared at the ground. Officer Martinez came closer. She looked at Derek with disappointment in her eyes. Did you finally figure out you made a mistake? She asked him. Derek's face turned red again, but this time it was from embarrassment, not anger. Before anyone could say anything else, 2 more patrol cars pulled up. 3 officers got out. One was an older man with gray hair and sergeant stripes on his uniform. The other two were younger officers, one man and one woman. The sergeant walked over with authority in his step. His name tag said Reynolds. "Walsh, what's going on here?" Sergeant Reynolds asked. Derek tried to stand up straighter. He tried to look confident again. "I pulled this man over for a traffic violation. He's wearing a military uniform and I have reason to believe it's fake. I was investigating possible stolen valor." Sergeant Reynolds looked at Min-jun. He looked at the uniform. He looked at the ribbons and medals. His eyes went to the eagles on Min-jun's shoulders. His expression changed immediately. "Those are Colonel's eagles," Reynolds said slowly. He looked at Derek. "You stopped a colonel?" "I don't think he's really a colonel," Derek said, but his voice was weak now. Reynolds walked closer to Min-jun. He looked at the uniform more carefully. He saw the unit patches, the combat infantry badge, the airborne wings, the ranger tab. "Sir," Reynolds said to Min-jun, with clear respect in his voice, "I apologize for this situation. May I see your military ID?" "Of course, Sergeant," Min-jun replied. He took out his wallet and handed over his military identification card. Reynolds examined it carefully. He checked the photo. He checked the rank. He checked the expiration date. He even held it up to the light to verify the security features. "This is real," Reynolds said. He looked at Derek with anger in his eyes. "This is a real colonel in the United States Army. What were you thinking?" "He didn't signal," Derek said weakly. "He didn't signal?" Reynolds repeated. "You stopped a military colonel, harassed him, accused him of stolen valor, and threatened to arrest him because he allegedly didn't use a turn signal?" The other two officers who had arrived with Reynolds looked shocked. The young female officer whose name tag said Chen stepped closer to look at Min-jun's uniform. "Oh no," Officer Chen said quietly. "Is that a Bronze Star?" Min-jun nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Chen looked at Derek with disgust. "You accused a Bronze Star recipient of stolen valor?" Derek had no answer. He just stood there looking at the ground. Martinez stepped forward. She held up her phone. "Sergeant Reynolds, I recorded most of the interaction. Officer Walsh made several racist comments. He refused to verify the colonel's credentials properly. He threatened to arrest him without cause, and he told me he would end my career if I spoke up." Reynolds took Martinez's phone and watched the video. His face got darker with each passing second. When the video ended, he looked at Derek with pure disappointment. "Turn in your badge and gun," Reynolds said to Derek. "Right now." "What?" "You can't." "I can, and I am. This is the worst case of misconduct I've seen in my 25 years on this force. You're suspended immediately. The chief will deal with you later." Derek's hands shook as he removed his badge and gun. He handed them to Reynolds. Officer Chen walked over to Min-jun. "Sir, on behalf of the police department, I apologize. This should never have happened. Thank you." "Officer," Min-jun said. The young male officer who had come with Reynolds approached the crowd that was still watching. "Folks, we appreciate you documenting this. If anyone has video footage, please send it to the police department. We take misconduct seriously." The old man in the baseball cap who had defended Min-jun earlier called out, "I got the whole thing on video, and I'm sending it to every news station in the state." Reynolds nodded. "That's your right, sir. In fact, we'd appreciate it. This needs to be investigated thoroughly." Derek looked panicked now. "You're all overreacting. This is just a misunderstanding." Martinez laughed bitterly. "A misunderstanding? You called him people like you 5 times. You said real Americans don't look like him. You mocked his service. That's not a misunderstanding, Derek. That's racism." More cars were arriving now. A news van pulled up. A reporter and a cameraman got out quickly and started setting up. The reporter, a young woman with blonde hair, approached Sergeant Reynolds. "Sergeant, we got a tip about a confrontation here. Can you comment?" Reynolds looked tired. "We're handling an internal matter. That's all I can say right now." But the reporter had already spotted Min-jun in his uniform. She walked over to him. "Sir, are you the person who was stopped? Can you tell us what happened?" Min-jun looked at Reynolds. Reynolds nodded slightly. "I was pulled over for allegedly failing to signal," Min-jun said calmly. The officer questioned whether my uniform was real. "He accused me of stolen valor. Despite providing valid identification, he refused to verify my credentials through proper channels and threatened to arrest me." The reporter's eyes got wide. "You're really a colonel?" "Yes, ma'am. I've served 22 years in the United States Army." The cameraman was filming everything. The reporter turned to face the camera. This is Lisa Chen reporting from Oakdale, Alabama, where a decorated Army colonel was stopped and harassed by a local police officer. We're still gathering details, but witnesses say the officer made racist comments and threatened to arrest the colonel for stolen valor, despite valid identification. Derek tried to walk away, but Reynolds stopped him. You're not going anywhere. You'll wait here until the chief arrives. This is unfair, Derek complained. I was just doing my job. Your job is to serve and protect, Reynolds said angrily, not to harass and discriminate. You've disgraced the badge. Officer Martinez stood next to Minjun. I'm so sorry, Colonel. I should have stopped this sooner. You did the right thing, Minjun told her. You spoke up when it mattered. That takes courage. I was scared, Martinez admitted. Derek has a lot of power in this department. He's friends with the mayor. He's been here for 15 years. I've only been here for 3 years. That makes your courage even more impressive, Minjun said. Another car arrived. This one was black and official looking. A man in a suit stepped out. He looked angry and stressed. He walked straight to Sergeant Reynolds. I'm Police Chief Peterson. What happened here? Reynolds handed him Martinez's phone. This video will explain everything, Chief. Chief Peterson watched the video. His face went from confused to shocked to furious. When the video ended, he looked at Derek. My office. Tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. Bring a union representative if you want one. Chief, I can explain. Not here. Not now. Chief Peterson turned to Minjun. Colonel Park, I presume? Yes, sir. On behalf of the Oakdale Police Department, I offer you my deepest apologies. This is not who we are. This is not what we stand for. Officer Walsh's behavior was unacceptable and will be dealt with severely. I appreciate that, Chief. Would you be willing to come to the station to give a formal statement? Yes, but I should tell you that the United States Army is also sending representatives. They should be arriving soon. Chief Peterson looked confused. The Army is coming here? Yes, sir. I called my commanding officer. General Morrison. He's sending people to investigate this incident. The chief's face went pale. A general is involved? Yes, sir. Oh, Lord, the chief said quietly. He looked at Derek. Do you have any idea what you've done? This isn't just a local incident anymore. The military is involved. The media is here. This is going to be national news. Derek finally seemed to understand the gravity of his situation. His legs looked weak. He leaned against the patrol car for support. The crowd had grown even bigger. At least 20 people were watching now. Cars were slowing down as they passed, their occupants trying to see what was happening. Another woman in the crowd called out. She was middle-aged with brown hair. I recognize him. I recognize the colonel. He was on the news last year for saving those refugees. Officer Chen heard this and looked at Minjun with new respect. You're that Colonel Park? The one who led the humanitarian mission in Afghanistan? Yes, ma'am. My brother served under you, Chen said. Her voice was thick with emotion. He said you were the best commanding officer he ever had. He said you saved his life twice. Minjun smiled slightly. What's your brother's name? David Chen. He was a lieutenant in your battalion. I remember David, good officer. Good man. How is he doing? He's doing great, sir. He's teaching at West Point now. The sound of engines grew louder. 3 large black SUVs were approaching fast. They pulled up near the police cars. The doors opened and military police officers stepped out. They wore uniforms and carried themselves with authority. From the middle SUV, a man in a green service uniform stepped out. The stars on his shoulders showed he was a brigadier general. Behind him came more officers and the provost marshal. The news reporters were recording everything. The camera was focused on General Harrison as he stood in front of Derek. The general's presence was powerful and commanding. Even the civilians in the crowd stood a little straighter. Officer Chen approached the general and saluted. Sir, I'm Officer Lisa Chen. My brother David served under Colonel Park. David speaks very highly of him. General Harrison's stern expression softened slightly. Lieutenant David Chen, good officer. He's doing excellent work at West Point. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. The general turned back to face everyone. He pulled out his phone and tapped on it a few times. Then he held it up so people could see the screen. I want everyone here to understand exactly who Colonel Park is. This is his official service record. He began to read from his phone. His voice was clear and loud enough for everyone to hear. Colonel Minjun Park, commissioned as a second lieutenant 22 years ago. served with the 82nd Airborne Division, 75th Ranger Regiment, and most recently commanded a battalion at Fort Benning. He has completed 2 combat tours in Afghanistan. He holds a Bronze Star with Valor for actions in combat. He holds 2 Purple Hearts for wounds received in action. He holds the Legion of Merit for exceptional service. He has Army Commendation Medals, Achievement Medals, and numerous other awards. The crowd was silent. Even Derek had stopped trying to defend himself. General Harrison continued. 16 months ago, Colonel Park led a humanitarian rescue operation that saved over 200 Afghan refugees, including 73 children. He and his team went into a hostile area, under fire, to evacuate civilians who were in danger. 3 of his soldiers were wounded. Colonel Park personally carried 2 children to safety while under enemy fire. Officer Martinez had tears in her eyes. Several people in the crowd looked emotional too. The operation was covered by international news. The general went on. Colonel Park was interviewed by CNN, BBC, and other major networks. He received a personal commendation from the Secretary of Defense. And this is the man you accused of wearing a costume, Officer Walsh. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. The old man in the baseball cap spoke up again. I remember that story. I saw it on the news. He's a hero. Yes, he is, General Harrison agreed. He looked at Minjun with respect and admiration. Colonel Park represents the very best of the United States Army. He is a leader, a warrior, and a humanitarian. And he was treated like a criminal in your town. Chief Peterson looked deeply ashamed. General Harrison, I assure you this does not represent the values of our police department or our community. Officer Walsh will face the full consequences of his actions. I hope so, the general said. Because the Army will be watching closely. The Provost Marshal stepped forward again. He looked at Derek and the other police officers. I need to conduct interviews with everyone involved. Officer Walsh, you'll be interviewed first. Then Officer Martinez, Sergeant Reynolds, and the other officers who responded. All witnesses will also be interviewed. A woman from the crowd raised her hand. I have video of the whole thing. Do you want to see it? Yes, ma'am. We'll need copies of all video footage. Several other people called out that they also had videos. The old man, the young woman, and 3 others all had recorded the incident from different angles. Another SUV pulled up. This one was not military. It was from the FBI. 2 agents in suits stepped out. They approached Chief Peterson and showed him their badges. I'm Special Agent Rodriguez, and this is Special Agent Williams. We're with the FBI's Civil Rights Division. We received a report about a possible civil rights violation involving a military officer. Chief Peterson looked even more stressed. Yes, agents. We're already investigating. We'll be conducting our own investigation as well, Agent Rodriguez said. She was a Hispanic woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. This appears to be a clear case of racial profiling and harassment. Agent Williams, an African-American man with gray at his temples, looked at Minjun. Colonel Park, would you be willing to give us a statement? Yes, sir. I'm happy to cooperate with your investigation. Derek looked like he might faint. He was facing not just a police investigation, but also a military investigation and an FBI investigation. His career was over. He might even face criminal charges. Officer Martinez approached the FBI agents. I have video evidence and my own testimony. Officer Walsh made multiple racist statements. He refused to verify the colonel's credentials. He threatened to arrest him without cause, and he threatened to end my career when I tried to stop him. Agent Rodriguez took Martinez's phone and began watching the video. Her expression grew darker as she watched. When it finished, she looked at Derek with disgust. Officer Walsh, you need to understand something. What you did today was not just wrong. It was illegal. You violated this man's civil rights. You discriminated against him based on his race. You abused your authority as a police officer. These are federal crimes. Derek's face was now completely white. His hands were shaking. Sergeant Reynolds spoke up. Agents, I want you to know that Officer Walsh has had complaints against him before. They were always dismissed or handled quietly, but I always suspected he had a problem with racial bias. How many complaints? Agent Williams asked. At least 5 that I know of, maybe more. Chief Peterson looked surprised. 5 complaints? Why wasn't I told about this? Reynolds looked uncomfortable. Walsh has friends in high places. The complaints always seem to disappear. I tried to bring it up once, but I was told to drop it. Who told you to drop it? Agent Rodriguez asked. I'd rather not say here. You'll need to tell us during the official investigation. I will. I promise. General Harrison was listening to all of this with a hard expression. He turned to Chief Peterson. Chief, it sounds like this problem goes deeper than just one officer. It sounds like there's a systemic issue in your department. Chief Peterson nodded sadly. I'm beginning to see that, General. And I promise you it will be addressed. Completely. More people were arriving. The mayor pulled up in his car. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s with a red face and thinning hair. He rushed over to Chief Peterson. What in the world is going on? I got about 50 phone calls in the last 20 minutes. Chief Peterson explained the situation quickly. The mayor's face went from confused to horrified. Derek Walsh did what? The mayor looked at Minjun. Colonel, I'm so sorry. This is mortifying. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oakdale is a good town. We're not like this. We support our military. We have a Veterans Day parade every year. We have programs to help veterans. This is not who we are. One bad officer doesn't define a whole community, Minjun said graciously. But how you respond to this will define your community. The mayor nodded. You're absolutely right. And we will respond appropriately. Derek Walsh will be fired and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Derek finally spoke up. His voice was weak and desperate. But I've been on this force for 15 years. I have a family. I have a mortgage. You can't just destroy my life over one mistake. Officer Martinez turned on him angrily. One mistake? This wasn't a mistake, Derek. This was a choice. You chose to pull him over. You chose to harass him. You chose to make racist comments. You chose to threaten him. You made choice after choice, and every single one was wrong. And it wasn't just one time, Sergeant Reynolds added. I've watched you for years. I've seen how you treat people who don't look like you. I've heard the things you say when you think no one important is listening. This was just the first time you got caught on camera. Derek had no response. He knew they were right. The news reporter, who had been filming and recording everything, approached Minjun with her microphone. Colonel Park, how do you feel about what happened today? Minjun thought for a moment before answering. I feel disappointed. I've served this country for 22 years. I've put on this uniform every day with pride. I've led soldiers in combat. I've bled for this nation, and today I was treated like a criminal because of how I look and where my parents were born. Are you angry? Yes, but not just for myself. I'm angry for every person of color who has been treated this way. I'm angry for every immigrant who has been told they don't belong. I'm angry for every soldier who has served this country with honor, only to be disrespected at home. The reporter nodded. What do you want to see happen now? I want justice. I want accountability. I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else. And I want Officer Walsh to understand that wearing a badge doesn't give you the right to discriminate. It gives you the responsibility to serve everyone equally. The camera captured everything. This interview would be shown on news stations across the country. The provost marshal was organizing the investigation. He had set up a command post in one of the SUVs. He was interviewing witnesses one by one and collecting all the video footage. Officer Chen approached Minjun again. Sir, I want you to know that most of us aren't like Derek. Most of us joined the police force because we want to help people. We want to make our community safer. Officers like Derek make us all look bad. Thank you, sir. A local pastor arrived at the scene. He was an elderly black man with white hair and kind eyes. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the highway. What had started as a simple traffic stop hours ago had turned into a major incident involving multiple law enforcement agencies, the military and the FBI. The crowd had grown to over 50 people, and more news crews had arrived from nearby cities. The provost marshal finished interviewing the witnesses and approached General Harrison and Chief Peterson. I've completed the preliminary interviews. The evidence is overwhelming. Multiple witnesses confirm that Officer Walsh engaged in racial profiling, harassment, and abuse of authority. We have video evidence from 6 different sources. Officer Martinez's testimony is particularly damning. Chief Peterson sighed heavily. I need to address this with my department immediately. This can't wait until tomorrow. Agreed, General Harrison said. But first I want to make sure Colonel Park is taken care of. He's been standing here for over 2 hours. He was on his way to visit his mother. Minjun had almost forgotten about his mother. He pulled out his phone and saw 3 missed calls from her. He stepped away from the group and called her back. Minjun.
Where are you?
I've been worried. His mother's voice was full of concern. She spoke in Korean. I'm sorry, Mom, I got delayed. There was a situation with the police. Min-jun responded in Korean as well. The police. Are you in trouble? No, Mom, I'm not in trouble. But it's complicated. I'll explain everything when I get there. I'm going to be a few more hours late. Are you safe? Yes, Mom, I'm safe. The army is here with me. Everything is being handled. Okay, drive carefully. I love you. I love you too, Mom. Min-jun ended the call and walked back to the group. General Harrison looked at him with concern. Colonel, you need to go see your mother. You've been through enough today. We can handle things from here. With respect, sir, I'd like to stay until the initial investigation is complete. This is important, I understand. But you've given your statement. You've cooperated fully. There's no reason for you to stay any longer. Min-jun knew the general was right, but part of him felt like leaving now would be letting Derek off too easily. He wanted to see this through. Officer Martinez approached them. Colonel Park, may I speak with you privately for a moment? Of course. They walked a few steps away from the group. Martinez looked nervous and emotional. Sir, I want to apologize again. I should have stopped Derek immediately. I shouldn't have waited so long. Officer Martinez, you did stop him. You stood up to him. You recorded evidence. You testified against him. That took tremendous courage. I was scared, she admitted. Derek has been my training officer. He has power in this department. He threatened to end my career, and I believe he could have done it. But when I saw how he was treating you, I knew I had to do something. My conscience wouldn't let me stay silent. That's what makes you a good officer. You chose what was right over what was easy. Martinez wiped her eyes. My father is an immigrant from Mexico. He came here legally and worked hard his whole life. He always taught me to respect everyone, especially those who serve. When I heard Derek saying those things to you, I heard all the things people have said to my father over the years. I couldn't let it continue. Your father raised you well. He should be proud of you. Thank you, sir. That means a lot coming from you. They walked back to the main group. The FBI agents had finished their preliminary investigation and were preparing to leave. Agent Rodriguez approached Min-jun. Colonel Park, we'll be in touch. This case will be a priority for our office. Civil rights violations against military personnel are taken very seriously. I appreciate that, Agent Rodriguez. One more thing. We're going to look into the other complaints against Officer Walsh. Sergeant Reynolds mentioned there were at least 5. We suspect there may be more that were never officially filed. If we find a pattern of civil rights violations, the charges against Walsh will be much more severe. Derek, who was sitting in the back of a patrol car now, heard this. He put his head in his hands. The mayor was on his phone talking to various people. When he finished his call, he addressed everyone. I've called an emergency town council meeting for tomorrow evening. We need to address this situation publicly. We need to discuss reforms to our police department, and we need to rebuild trust with our community, especially our minority residents. Chief Peterson nodded. I'll prepare a full report on Officer Walsh's history and what reforms we need to implement. Sergeant Reynolds spoke up. Chief, I have a list of recommendations. I've been thinking about these issues for years. Body cameras for all officers, mandatory bias training, a civilian oversight board, and a better system for handling complaints. I want to see that list first thing tomorrow morning, the chief said. Officer Chen added, we should also have regular community meetings. Let people come and talk to us. Let them express their concerns. We need to rebuild relationships. Good idea, the chief agreed. Pastor Williams stepped forward. I'd like to offer our church as a venue for those community meetings. We have space and we're centrally located, and I'd like to help facilitate conversations between the police and the community. Thank you, Pastor. I accept your offer. General Harrison checked his watch. Colonel Park, you really need to get on the road. Your mother is waiting. Min-jun nodded. Yes, sir. The general turned to Chief Peterson. The Army will be monitoring this situation closely. We expect regular updates on the investigation and any disciplinary actions taken. You'll have full cooperation, General. Good. General Harrison saluted Min-jun. Drive safely, Colonel. And give your mother my regards. Min-jun returned the salute. Thank you, sir. As Min-jun walked back to his car, several people from the crowd came up to thank him. The veterans saluted him. The old man in the baseball cap shook his hand firmly. You handled yourself with class, Colonel. You showed real leadership today. Thank you, sir. And thank you for speaking up for me. That's what veterans do. We look out for each other. The young woman who had been recording approached next. "Colonel Park, I posted the video on social media. It already has over 1 million views. People are outraged. They're demanding justice." "I hope that outrage leads to real change," Minjun said. "I think it will. You've started something important here." Officer Chen walked Minjun to his car. "Sir, again, I'm so sorry about what happened. I hope you can still think well of our community. I don't judge a whole community by one bad officer. I've seen how many good people are here. People who stood up for what was right. Thank you, sir. Drive safely." Minjun got into his car. He sat there for a moment, taking deep breaths. The adrenaline was finally wearing off, and he felt exhausted. He started the engine and pulled back onto the highway. As he drove, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize with a Washington, D.C. area code. He answered it using his car's Bluetooth. "This is Colonel Park." "Colonel Park, this is Congressman Michael Chen from California. I just saw the video of what happened to you today." "I'm absolutely appalled." Minjun was surprised. A congressman was calling him personally. "Thank you for your concern. Congressman, I want you to know that I'm going to raise this issue in Congress. We need to address racial profiling and discrimination against military personnel. This is unacceptable." "I appreciate that, Congressman. I'd also like to invite you to testify before a committee. Your story needs to be heard. We need to make sure this never happens to another soldier." Minjun thought about this. Testifying before Congress would be a big step. It would keep him in the public eye, but it might also lead to real change. "Let me think about it, Congressman. Today has been overwhelming. Of course, take your time. But please consider it. Your voice matters." After the call ended, Minjun's phone rang again. This time, it was a reporter from the New York Times. Then CNN called. Then the Washington Post. His story was already spreading across the nation. Minjun turned off his phone. He needed some quiet. He needed to process everything that had happened. 2 hours later, he pulled into his mother's driveway. She ran out of the house before he could even turn off the engine. She was a small woman in her 70s with gray hair and kind eyes. She hugged him tightly. "Minjun, I was so worried. Are you okay?" "I'm okay, Mom, I promise." She pulled back and looked at him carefully. "You look tired. Come inside. I made your favorite dinner." Inside the house, Minjun's mother had prepared a feast. Korean dishes covered the dining table. She had made kimchi stew, bulgogi, rice, and various side dishes. The smell made Minjun realize how hungry he was. As they ate, Minjun told his mother the whole story. She listened quietly, her face showing various emotions: anger, sadness, pride. "That police officer was very wrong," she said in Korean. "But you handled it well. You stayed calm. You were respectful. That's what I taught you. I learned from the best, Mom. I hope so. He always said that true strength is not in fighting. It's in knowing when to fight and when to stay calm. You showed true strength today." After dinner, Minjun's mother showed him the news on her TV. His story was the top headline on multiple channels. The video had gone viral. People across the country were talking about it. One news channel had a panel discussion. Military experts, civil rights activists, and law enforcement professionals were debating what happened. Most were supportive. 3 days had passed since the incident. Minjun was still at his mother's house, taking some leave time that General Morrison had insisted he take. But he couldn't escape the story. It was everywhere. The video had been viewed over 20 million times on social media. News channels played it constantly. People across the country were discussing it. Some supported Minjun completely. Others tried to defend Derek Walsh. The debate had become national. Minjun's phone rang. It was Chief Peterson from Oakdale. "Colonel Park, this is Chief Peterson. I wanted to give you an update on our investigation." "I'm listening, Chief." "First, I want you to know that Officer Walsh has been terminated from the police force. The termination was effective immediately. He will not be working in law enforcement in this town or any other town if I have anything to say about it." "I see." "Second, our internal investigation has uncovered significant problems. Sergeant Reynolds was right. There were multiple complaints against Walsh that were buried. We found 11 separate incidents over the past 8 years, where Walsh was accused of racial profiling or excessive force against minorities." Minjun felt his jaw tighten. 11 incidents. That meant 11 people had been treated the way he was treated. Maybe worse. "Why were these complaints buried?" Minjun asked. Chief Peterson sighed heavily. That's the part that makes me most ashamed. Walsh had friends in the department and in the town government. When complaints came in, they were often dismissed as misunderstandings or the complainants were discredited. Some people were even intimidated into dropping their complaints. That's unacceptable. You're right, it is, and it ends now. I've opened investigations into everyone who helped cover up Walsh's behavior. Several people will likely lose their jobs or face criminal charges for obstruction of justice. What about the victims? The people who filed complaints? We're reaching out to all of them, apologizing, offering to reopen their cases, and we're setting up a compensation fund for anyone who was wronged by our department. That's a good start. There's more. The FBI found additional evidence. Walsh kept a personal phone that had text messages showing clear racial bias. He was part of a group chat with other officers where they made racist jokes and discussed targeting minority drivers. Min-jun felt sick. This was worse than he thought. How many other officers were involved? 4 others. All have been suspended pending investigation. If the evidence holds up, they'll all be fired. Chief Peterson, I appreciate you keeping me informed, but I hope you understand that this goes beyond just firing a few officers. You need systemic change, I agree. That's why we're implementing every reform that Sergeant Reynolds suggested. Body cameras for all officers, mandatory bias training, a civilian oversight board, and a new complaint system that can't be manipulated. We're also bringing in outside consultants to review all of our policies and procedures. That's good to hear. Colonel Park, I know this doesn't undo what happened to you, but I want you to know that your experience is forcing us to confront problems we should have addressed years ago. In a way, you're making this department better. I hope so, Chief, because if my experience can prevent this from happening to someone else, then maybe something good can come from it. After the call ended, Min-jun's mother brought him lunch. She had been taking care of him, making sure he ate well and rested. She knew the stress was affecting him even though he tried to hide it. Was that the police chief? She asked. Yes, Walsh has been fired, and they found out he had a history of this behavior. His mother shook her head sadly. People like that shouldn't be police officers. Police are supposed to protect everyone, not hurt people. You're right, Mom. That evening, Min-jun received a call from FBI agent Rodriguez. Colonel Park, I wanted to update you on the federal investigation. We're moving forward with criminal charges against Derek Walsh. What charges? Deprivation of rights under color of law. It's a federal civil rights violation. If convicted, he could face up to a year in prison. We're also looking at charges of intimidating witnesses because he threatened Officer Martinez. What about the other officers in that group chat? We're still investigating them. The evidence is strong, but we want to make sure we have everything before we file charges. Some of them might face federal charges too. Agent Rodriguez, can I ask you something? Of course. How common is this? Officers targeting people because of their race. There was a pause. More common than it should be, Colonel. Racial profiling is a serious problem in many departments across the country. Most officers are good people doing a hard job. But there are some, like Walsh, who abuse their power. Your case is getting attention because you're a high-ranking military officer. But this happens to regular citizens all the time, and their stories don't make national news. That's what concerns me. I have a platform now. I have credibility because of my rank and service. But what about the people who don't have that? Who will speak for them? That's why cases like yours are important. They shine a light on the problem. They force people to pay attention, and hopefully they lead to change. The next day, Min-jun received an unexpected visitor. Officer Martinez drove to his mother's house. She looked nervous as she knocked on the door. Min-jun invited her in. His mother offered her tea, which she accepted gratefully. Colonel Park, I hope it's okay that I came here. I got your mother's address from the police report. It's fine, Officer Martinez. What can I do for you? I wanted to tell you something in person. I've been promoted. Chief Peterson made me a detective. He said my integrity and courage during your incident showed that I have what it takes to be an investigator. Min-jun smiled. Congratulations. You deserve it, thank you. But that's not the only reason I came. I also wanted to tell you what's been happening in the department. The changes are real. Officers are taking the bias training seriously. People are speaking up about problems instead of staying quiet. The whole culture is shifting. That's good to hear. There's something else. Several officers have come to me privately and apologized. They said they knew Walsh was a problem, but they didn't do anything about it. They feel guilty now. They wish they had been braver. What did you tell them? I told them it's never too late to do the right thing. I told them to support the reforms and to speak up if they see problems in the future. Minjun's mother spoke up. You are a good person, Officer Martinez. My son was lucky you were there that day. Martinez's eyes filled with tears. I wish I had stopped it sooner. I'll always regret that I didn't act immediately. You acted when it mattered, Minjun said. That's what counts. Martinez finished her tea and stood to leave. Colonel Park, there's one more thing. The community is organizing a ceremony. They want to honor you and apologize publicly for what happened. Would you be willing to attend? Minjun hesitated. Part of him wanted to just move on and forget about the incident. But another part of him knew that the ceremony might help the community heal. When is it? 2 weeks from now. At the town square. I'll be there. That night, Minjun finally called Congressman Chen back. Congressman, I've thought about your invitation to testify before Congress. I'm ready to do it. That's wonderful, Colonel. I think your testimony could make a real difference. I have some conditions, though. What are they? I want to testify not just about what happened to me, but about racial profiling in general. I want to talk about the other victims, the people whose stories didn't make the news. I want to advocate for real reforms, not just punishments for bad officers. I think that's exactly what we need to hear. We're planning a hearing on police reform and civil rights. Your testimony would be the centerpiece. When? 1 month from now. That gives you time to prepare. I'll be ready. The next 2 weeks passed quickly. Minjun stayed with his mother and used the time to research police reform. He read studies about racial profiling. He talked to civil rights activists. He reached out to other victims of police discrimination and heard their stories. He learned that what happened to him was not unique. Black men were stopped by police at much higher rates than white men. Hispanic drivers were more likely to be searched. Asian Americans were often treated as foreigners even if they were born in the United States. The statistics were depressing, but they motivated Minjun. He was determined to use his platform to advocate for change. The day of the ceremony arrived. Minjun drove back to Oakdale with his mother. The town square was packed with people. Hundreds of residents had come out. There was a stage set up with a microphone and speakers. As Minjun walked to the square, people recognized him and applauded. Some people wanted to shake his hand. Others wanted to take photos with him. It was overwhelming, but Minjun remained gracious. Mayor Roberts took the stage first. His voice boomed through the speakers. Thank you all for coming today. We are here to address a dark moment in our town's history. 3 weeks ago, Colonel Minjun Park, a decorated war hero and public servant, was stopped and harassed by one of our police officers. The officer engaged in racial profiling and discriminatory behavior. This was wrong. It was unacceptable, and it does not represent the values of Oakdale. The crowd applauded. Chief Peterson spoke next. He outlined all the reforms the department was implementing. He talked to Abby. 1 month later, Minjun found himself in Washington, D.C., preparing to testify before Congress. He wore his dress uniform with all his medals and ribbons. He had spent weeks preparing his testimony, making sure it was clear, powerful, and focused on solutions. The hearing room was packed. News cameras lined the walls. Senators and representatives sat at a long table facing him. Behind Minjun, the gallery was full of people, including his mother, Officer Martinez, and several of Derek Walsh's victims who had traveled to Washington to support him. Congressman Chen, who was chairing the hearing, called the session to order. Today we are here to discuss police reform and civil rights. Our witness is Colonel Minjun Park, a decorated Army officer who was subjected to racial profiling and harassment while simply driving through Alabama. Colonel Park, thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me, Congressman. Please share your testimony. Minjun took a deep breath and began. He told the story of what happened that day on the highway. He described Derek Walsh's behavior. He talked about the fear and humiliation he felt, but he didn't stop there. My experience, while painful, is not unique. Every day, thousands of Americans are stopped, questioned, and harassed because of their race or ethnicity. Many of them don't have the platform I have. They don't have military rank or public recognition. Their stories don't make the news. But their pain is just as real. He looked directly at the committee members. I'm here today not just to tell my story, but to advocate for systemic change. We need national standards for police conduct. We need better training on implicit bias. We need accountability systems that actually work. And we need to change the culture in law enforcement that protects bad officers. He outlined specific recommendations: body cameras for all officers with strict policies on when they must be used, independent review boards to investigate complaints, data collection on police stops to identify patterns of discrimination, protections for officers who report misconduct by their colleagues. These reforms won't solve everything, Minjun said, but they're a start. They send a message that we take civil rights seriously, that we value dignity and respect for all Americans. The committee members asked questions for over 2 hours. Some were supportive and sympathetic. Others were skeptical, arguing that most police officers do good work and shouldn't be punished for the actions of a few bad officers. Senator Williams, a black woman from Georgia, asked a particularly powerful question. Colonel Park, some people might say you should just accept the apology from Oakdale and move on. Why do you think it's important to keep pushing for change? Minjun thought carefully before answering. Senator, I could move on. I could return to my life and my career and forget this ever happened. But I can't forget about all the other people this has happened to. I can't forget about the young black man who gets stopped for driving while black. I can't forget about the Hispanic woman who gets asked for her papers, even though she's a citizen. I can't forget about the Asian American who gets told to go back to China, even though his family has been here for generations. He paused, his voice growing stronger. I'm fighting for change because I have 3 advantages most people don't have. I have military rank, which gives me credibility. I have media attention, which gives me a platform. And I have resources, which give me the ability to fight. If I don't use these advantages to help others, then what was my service for? What was all that talk about defending freedom and justice really about? The room was silent for a moment. Then applause broke out from the gallery. Senator Williams nodded with tears in her eyes. Thank you, Colonel. That's the kind of leadership this country needs. After the hearing, Minjun was swarmed by reporters. They asked him about his testimony, about Derek Walsh, about police reform. Minjun answered their questions patiently, always steering the conversation back to the need for systemic change. That evening, Minjun's testimony was the top story on every news channel. Clips of his most powerful statements were shared millions of times on social media. Public opinion polls showed overwhelming support for the reforms he proposed, but not everyone was happy with his testimony. Some police unions criticized him, saying he was painting all officers with a broad brush. Some conservative commentators accused him of being divisive. Some people even sent him hate mail and death threats. Minjun tried not to let the negativity affect him, but it was hard. One night he called his old friend and fellow officer, Lieutenant Colonel Park Jin-ho. Jin-ho, am I doing the right thing? Am I pushing too hard? Minjun, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. You're using your voice to speak for people who don't have a voice. That's what leaders do. But I'm getting so much pushback. Some people really hate me now. That's because you're threatening a system that benefits some people. Change is always uncomfortable for those in power, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. I guess you're right. I know I'm right. And you know what else? You're inspiring people. I've had 3 soldiers in my battalion tell me that watching you testify made them proud to serve. You're showing them what it means to stand up for your principles. That conversation helped Minjun feel better. He was doing the right thing, even if it was difficult. 2 months after the congressional testimony, Derek Walsh's trial began. The federal prosecutor had charged him with civil rights violations and intimidation of a witness. Minjun had to testify in court. The courtroom was smaller than the congressional hearing room, but just as intense. Derek sat at the defense table with his lawyer. He looked thinner and older than Minjun remembered. He avoided making eye contact with Minjun. Minjun took the stand and was sworn in. The prosecutor asked him to describe what happened that day on the highway. Minjun told the story calmly and clearly. He didn't exaggerate or embellish. He just stated the facts. Derek's lawyer tried to cross-examine him aggressively, suggesting that Minjun had been disrespectful or confrontational. But the video evidence contradicted these claims. Multiple videos from multiple angles showed that Minjun had been polite and cooperative throughout the entire encounter. Officer Martinez testified next. She was nervous but determined. She described how Derek had made racist comments and refused to verify Minjun's credentials. She talked about how Derek had threatened her when she tried to intervene. Derek's lawyer tried to suggest that Martinez was lying to save her own career. But Martinez stood firm. I recorded what happened because I knew it was wrong. I spoke up because I couldn't stay silent, and I'm testifying now because Derek Walsh needs to be held accountable. Several of Derek's other victims testified as well. The black man who had been stopped multiple times, the Hispanic woman who had been humiliated in front of her children, the Asian elderly man who had been called racial slurs. Each testimony painted a picture of a man who had abused his authority for years, a man who targeted people based on their race, a man who believed he was above the law. The defense tried to argue that Derek was just a dedicated officer doing his job in a tough environment. They called character witnesses who said Derek was a good father and a loyal friend. But these testimonies couldn't erase the evidence of his actions. The trial lasted 1 week. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. We, the jury, find the defendant, Derek Walsh, guilty on all counts. Derek's face crumpled. His wife, who had been sitting in the gallery, started crying. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. When the sentencing day came, Min Jun attended. He wanted to see justice carried out. Before the judge announced the sentence, Derek was given a chance to speak. He stood up slowly, his hands shaking. Your Honor, I want to apologize. To Colonel Park, to Officer Martinez, to everyone I've hurt over the years. His voice cracked. I know I was wrong. I let my prejudices control my actions. I abused the authority that was given to me. I'm ashamed of what I did. He turned to look at Min Jun. Colonel Park, I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did to you was inexcusable. You were serving our country and I treated you like a criminal. I let my racism blind me to your humanity. I'm sorry. Min Jun's face remained neutral. He appreciated the apology. But words couldn't undo the harm that had been done. The judge spoke next. Mr. Walsh, you violated the most basic principles of law enforcement. You discriminated against people based on their race. You abused your power. You intimidated witnesses. And you did this not once but repeatedly over many years. The judge paused. Looking at Derek sternly, Derek hung his head. I sentence you to 1 year in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. During your supervised release, you will complete 500 hours of community service, working specifically in minority communities. You will also be required to attend counseling to address your racial bias. Derek's wife gasped. His lawyer looked disappointed, clearly hoping for a lighter sentence. Furthermore, the judge continued, you are permanently barred from working in law enforcement or any position of public trust. You have forfeited the right to carry that badge. The judge banged the gavel. Court is adjourned. As Derek was led away. 3 years had passed since that day on the highway. Min Jun was back at Fort Benning, fully immersed in his duties as a colonel. But the incident had changed him in ways he was still discovering. He had become a national figure in the conversation about police reform and civil rights. He gave speeches at universities and law enforcement conferences. He consulted with police departments that wanted to improve their community relations. He served on a presidential commission studying racial bias in policing. But today he was returning to Oakdale, Alabama. The town had invited him back for a special ceremony. As Min Jun drove down the same highway where he had been stopped 3 years ago, he felt a strange mix of emotions. The memories of that day were still vivid. The anger in Derek Walsh's face, the humiliation of being questioned, the exhaustion of fighting for his dignity. But as he entered the town, he noticed something different. There were new signs welcoming visitors. The streets looked cleaner and more vibrant. New businesses had opened. The town looked healthier. Min Jun pulled into the town square and was surprised by what he saw. Hundreds of people had gathered. There was a stage decorated with American flags and flowers. A large banner read, Oakdale Moving Forward Together. Mayor Roberts, who was running for re-election on a platform of reform and inclusion, greeted Min Jun warmly. Colonel Park. Welcome back. I'm so glad you could come. Thank you for inviting me, Mayor. The town looks different. It is different. A lot has changed in 3 years. I want to show you something. The mayor led Min Jun to a section of the town square where workers were putting finishing touches on something covered with a large cloth. We're unveiling this today, the mayor said. It's a memorial. A memorial for what? For justice, dignity, and change. You'll see. Chief Peterson approached next. He looked older but also more confident than Min-jun remembered. "Colonel Park, it's good to see you again." "Chief Peterson, how are things at the department?" "Much better. We implemented all the reforms we discussed. Body cameras are mandatory. We have a civilian oversight board that actually has teeth. We've hired more diverse officers. And we've built real relationships with the community. That's wonderful to hear. But I want to show you the numbers. Crime is down 20%. Use of force incidents are down 40%. Complaints about officer misconduct are down 60%. And community satisfaction with police is up 70%. Min-jun was impressed. "Those are remarkable numbers." "It wasn't easy," Peterson admitted. "We lost some officers who didn't want to change. We faced resistance from the union. But we stuck with it. And now we're a model for other departments." Detective Martinez, who had been promoted again and was now a sergeant, came over with her husband and 2 young children. "Colonel Park, I want you to meet my family." Min-jun shook hands with her husband and knelt down to say hello to her children. "Are you the soldier who helped Mommy?" the older child, a girl about 6 years old, asked. Min-jun smiled. "Actually, your mommy helped me. She was very brave." Martinez's eyes got misty. "I tell my kids that story all the time, about how important it is to speak up when you see something wrong. That's a good lesson to teach them." The ceremony began with Pastor Williams offering an opening prayer. Then Mayor Roberts took the microphone. 3 years ago, something terrible happened in our town. A decorated military officer was stopped and harassed simply because of how he looked. That incident forced us to look in the mirror and confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves. The crowd was quiet, listening intently. But what happened next was remarkable. Instead of making excuses or defending the indefensible, we chose to change. We chose to do better. And today I'm proud to say that Oakdale is not the same town it was 3 years ago. The mayor gestured to Min-jun. "Colonel Park didn't have to come back here. After what he experienced, he could have written off our town forever. But he chose to give us a chance to make things right. And he's continued to support our efforts to change. For that, we are eternally grateful." The crowd applauded. Chief Peterson spoke next, describing all the reforms the department had implemented. He talked about the new training programs, the community policing initiatives, and the accountability measures. "We're not perfect," Peterson said. "We still make mistakes. But we're committed to learning from those mistakes and constantly improving. And we're committed to treating every person with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, religion, or background." Then it was time for the unveiling of the memorial. The mayor and Chief Peterson pulled away the cloth, revealing a beautiful stone monument. The memorial featured a bronze relief depicting a police officer and a soldier shaking hands. Below it was an inscription, "In memory of all those who have suffered injustice, in honor of those who speak truth to power, in hope of a future where dignity and respect are guaranteed to all, may we never forget. May we always do better." Below the inscription was a list of the reforms the town had implemented, and a quote from Min-jun's congressional testimony. "If I don't use my advantages to help others, then what was my service for?" Min-jun felt emotion welling up inside him. He hadn't expected this. The mayor handed him the microphone. "Colonel Park, would you like to say a few words?" Min-jun took a deep breath and approached the microphone. He looked out at the crowd and saw familiar faces. Officer Chen and her family, Sergeant Reynolds, who had retired but still volunteered with youth programs, the old veteran who had defended him that day, and many new faces, young people who had grown up hearing this story and learning from it. "Thank you, Mayor Roberts, Chief Peterson, and everyone here today. This memorial is beautiful and I'm honored. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to accept injustice." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "The real heroes are the people who do the hard work of change every single day. People like Officer Martinez, who risked her career to do what was right. People like Sergeant Reynolds, who supported her. People like Chief Peterson, who had the courage to admit his department had problems and actually fix them." The crowd applauded those individuals. The real heroes are the community members, who came to those meetings and held police accountable. The activists who kept pushing for reform even when it was uncomfortable. The officers who embraced change instead of resisting it. Min-jun looked at the memorial. "This monument shouldn't just honor me. It should honor everyone who has fought for justice. It should honor Derek Walsh's victims whose stories finally got heard. It should honor every person who has ever been treated unfairly and demanded better. He could see some people in the crowd wiping their eyes. 3 years ago, I drove through this town and experienced one of the worst moments of my life. Today I'm standing here witnessing one of the best examples of community transformation I've ever seen. That's powerful. That's meaningful. That's hope. He looked directly at the young people in the crowd. To the young people here, I want to tell you something important. Change is possible. It's not easy. It requires courage, persistence, and sacrifice. But it's possible. You can make your community better. You can stand up against injustice. You can be part of the solution. The young people were listening carefully, some nodding. And remember this: speaking up isn't just for people with rank or position or privilege. Every voice matters. Officer Martinez was just a patrol officer when she recorded that video. But her voice mattered. Your voice matters too. When Minjun finished speaking, the crowd gave him a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. After the ceremony, a town hall meeting was held. Community members asked questions and shared their experiences with the new policing practices. The atmosphere was positive and constructive. One young black man stood up. 3 years ago, I was scared every time I saw a police car. I worried about being stopped for no reason. But now I actually feel protected by the police. That's a huge change, a Hispanic woman shared next. My daughter wants to be a police officer now. She sees officers like Sergeant Martinez and Officer Chen, and she thinks she can make a difference. That wouldn't have happened 3 years ago. An elderly white man spoke. I'll be honest. 3 years ago, I thought all this talk about police reform was unnecessary. I thought people were making too big a deal out of one incident. But I was wrong. The reforms have made our town better and safer for everyone. I'm glad I was wrong. Minjun listened to these testimonies with satisfaction. This was what real change looked like. Later, Minjun visited the police academy where new officers were being trained. Chief Peterson had asked him to speak to the recruits. The classroom was full of young men and women of diverse backgrounds. They all stood when Minjun entered, showing respect for his rank. He told them his story. Not just about Derek Walsh, but about all the good officers he had encountered in his life. Officers who had helped him when he was lost. Officers who had protected him and his soldiers. Officers who had shown courage and compassion. Being a police officer is one of the most important jobs in society, Minjun said. You have the power to help people or hurt people. You have the power to build trust or destroy it. That's a huge responsibility. He looked at each recruit. Some of you,